Hello, I'm Lisa Rana, and I have a dreamy card to share with you today for this Assemble This video. I just really adore classic Eeyore, and I'm in love with the new line of stamps from Unity. I'm featuring this little guide today, and I'll be sharing with you how I created this storybook look for a lovely Eeyore birthday card. I started out by stamping the Eeyore in some Copic friendly ink on some Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock. And because it's a birthday card, I felt like Eeyore needed a balloon. So I created a mask on some copy paper. I'm just cutting out basically around his tail, but I did keep that little piece that I cut off. We're going to need that later. And then I taped that down. And I'm using this cute balloon from the Party Mix stamp set from Unity. I just think it's super sweet and it was the perfect size. And I'm using the same Copic friendly ink, the Gina K amalgam ink, and I'm gonna ink that up. And I just put this on my block. I figured it was easier than pulling out my Misty, and I could just line that up pretty simply. And I'm just gonna stamp that over my mask. This way the tail of that balloon is not going into my Eeyore. It just kind of ends at the end of his tail. So cute. I'm so excited about this. And then I pulled out some Copic markers. I'll have that list in my description of my blog. And I'm starting with the 3C grays. I'm starting with C4 and I'm creating the shadowing. The light is coming from this direction. It's coming from the top and pointing down. So I want all my shadow towards the bottom left of my Eeyore. So I'm creating all that shadowing first. And then next I'm going to pull out the C2 and I'm just going to blend that out just a little bit. Just kind of soften up the C4 so it's not such a harsh edge. And I tend to use a circular motion or lines with my Copic coloring. I'm all over the place. I don't have any artistic or education behind coloring, so I just kind of do what feels natural to me. And next I pulled out the C1 and I'm just going to create an overall blend over the Eeyore. Just kind of blends in all those ink colors and then just creates my base color for the little guy. And once I did that, I pulled out the C2 again, which is my midtone, and I'm just adding another layer. Again, kind of focusing towards the bottom left of the Eeyore, but pulling out that shadow just a little bit more because it's a midtone. And then I'm coming in with my darkest tone again and just creating that shadow. And I keep that smaller and I keep the mid-tone a little bit bigger, and then the lightest tone is the biggest overall color of everything. And I'll go back and forth. I've learned over time that markers will soak into your paper. Depends on your paper and how the markers will respond to it. So I just know that my colors are going to lighten a little bit, so I know that I need to let it dry and then maybe come back in a little bit later. It's all experience and it's all practice. I don't really have a tip for that other than to practice in using your markers and your paper and your technique to really kind of build up an experience, because over time you're going to realize that things change, and you're going to know that with your style of coloring, you may have to come back in later, or you may need to add more shadow as you go along. So I'm just giving you a base on how I do it, so maybe when you practice, it'll give you some ideas on how to build up your technique. Next, I went on to the balloon. I am just loving this teal. So I thought teal and gray was really, really pretty. So I pulled out some BG colors. I have BG10, BG11, and BG13. And again, I'm kind of focusing on the bottom of the balloon with the shadow, and then using my mid-tone to blend that out and kind of pull it more a little bit into the balloon, and then using my lightest color as the overall shadow and kind of blender of everything. Next, I'm going to add a bit of grass to the little Eeyore so he has something grounding him in the image. And I'm using YG12 first, and then I'll come in with a little bit of YG17 to create a bit of shadow and a little bit more interest to the grass that I'm drawing. And then last, I'm using the Zero blender just on the bottom edge of the grass to kind of blend that out and soften it. I thought this was fun. I just pulled out a normal old ballpoint pen, and I thought I'd draw in a little bit of grass blades and some shadowing and lines, so you get the idea of that he's on some grass. Just really simple. And then I'm using my black Copic, it's the 100, to kind of darken up the stamping on his mane and his tail. And then last, I brought in that C4. Again, see how that, it just really lightened up and all that ink kind of soaked into the paper, which I knew it would. So sometimes I'll come back in and kind of deepen up those shadows. So I pulled that C4, and I'm just really focusing on that shadowing lines that I created before, following kind of the same, again, bottom left of the Eeyore, just to kind of deepen that and to create the contrast, help the image pop a little bit more. And then last, I'll add just a light shadow of B0000 and just kind of go around the bottom of the balloon and then all the way around Eeyore. Kind of mimics the sky, but also kind of creates a shadow so he kind of pops against the whiteness of the cardstock. Again, I'm just doing nothing really harsh, just really light kind of circular motion, and then I'll come in and kind of blend the edge with the Zero blender marker as well. So perfect. So he was all colored in, and I put him in my Misty, and I'm going to stamp a background stamp over him. So I created a few masks just using copy paper. Pulled out the mask that I had before, and here's that little portion that I saved, and I'm just gonna glue that down. I'm using some repositionable adhesive just so I can take that copy paper off later. And now I have the More Cake background and some Gina Cake soft granite ink, and I'm just going to ink this up and stamp it right over my Copic colored image, and this kind of creates that storybook look. In my head, I was thinking, you know, Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore, it's a book. And so I kind of like the idea of having a textbook look. So it's kind of storybook, and so that story is in the background using the More Cake background. Next, I pulled out my favorite dies, the scallops and rectangles dies from Unity, and I'm just going to die cut him out and layer him over the scallop die. So it's super cute. And then I pulled out some chevron pattern paper, covered my card base, and then I'm going to glue down that scalloped rectangle right onto the card front. And then I'm popping up the center panel just with some foam adhesive, just to create a little dimension and interest to the card. Next, I have my sentiment. I'm just going to trim that down so it's a little banner. I'm using my little trimmer here just to create a strip. Super easy. And then I'll notch out one side. I always like to have a notched edge, or I tend to lean towards that. So I'm just going to notch out that side and then kind of get an eyeball on where I want to trim that down and create a pencil mark, just like that, and then I'll trim that off. And then I'll pop that up again just for a little bit more dimension with some foam adhesive. So I felt like it just needed a little bit more. Nothing crazy. So I have all these stars that I saved from this cover plate. It's the Falling Stars background die, and I keep those to the side. So I pulled a few of those out, and I used my Copic marker that I colored the balloon with. So I used BG 10, I think, 10 or 11. maybe 11, so it was a little bit deeper. And I just colored those stars in so they'd match the balloon. Super easy. And I love that they match perfectly. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of sparkle, so I pulled out my Wink Stella pen and added that to the stars, and then added a bit of shine to the balloon as well. And then I just pulled out some liquid adhesive, and I'm just going to glue those stars down. Lots of times I'll use enamel dots or I'll use Novo drops. I just thought the stars were a little bit different and fun. And here is our finished card. I just love the storybook look. I like the way that the text creates a little bit of texture and interest behind our cute little birthday Eeyore. And I love that sentiment. It's just very Eeyore-ish. Anyway, I'll have all the supplies linked in the description of this video on my channel and my blog. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Plus, if you have any questions or sweet comments, post below. Thank you again so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed and were inspired, and I'll see you next time. Bye.